Welcome to our council meeting of the 27th of June. If we could all please stand for our opening karakia. Tū taua mai runga, tū taua mai raro, tū taua mai roto, tū taua mai waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, oie, hui, ai. Just a reminder that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed. We have apologies from Councillor Price. If I could have a mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Mawson and Councillor Brown. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Any conflicts of interest? There is no announcements from myself. Any notification of minor matters not on the agenda? Any announcements by management? No. Okay, we have confirmation of the minutes from the council meeting held on Monday the 27th of May and also Thursday the 23rd of May. If I could please have mover and seconder for those. Thank you, Councillor Gregg, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right, we'll crack into our agenda item. We've got a big agenda ahead of us today. First up, we have the analysis of options to alleviate significant rates increases for impacted properties. And Gary Rostinsky is here to present the paper.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Sorry, I couldn't come up with a shorter title for that. Okay. So the average rates increase of 19.95% has impacted all ratepayers of Napier to varying degrees. So due to the significant increases in the value of some properties, there are pockets of Napier that have experienced similarly significant increases in rates. During deliberations, Council directed officers to look at options that may help alleviate the impact of significant rates increases for those impacted properties. The report is a response to that direction and provides information on options considered internally and externally through submissions, and illustrates why some avenues are not viable or possible. So some of the key points within the report. Amendments to policies such as the rates remission policy require public consultation prior to adoption. So the process will take a minimum of a few months and would not be ready in time for the start of the 24-25 financial year. Changes to property differentials impact the wider rating system and the revenue and financing policy. This is a significant piece of work if we go down that track. And that requires modelling, council workshops, public consultation and council meetings to adopt. There's a process that can take several years, and many of you will remember the last time we did that. So, there are several options available under rebates, postponements and government schemes that may be available for eligible applicants. So I'll take the remainder of the report as read.
Thank you very much, Gary. I'll open up for questions, and I guess just a reminder that this particular paper was the information we requested as part of our 3-year plan deliberations to see if there were any levers or tools available to us to just alleviate the pressure on these impacted property owners. So, Gary, very comprehensive report. Appreciate what you've pulled together for us here. So any questions from councillors? Open up for general discussion. Obviously, the officer's recommendation is just to receive this report. But if there is a desire for any further investigation in this area or to potentially initiate one of the policy changes or reviews as indicated in here, now would be the time to flag that to actually include in the resolution. Otherwise, it will be a straightforward resolution to receive this report and acknowledge that we essentially understand that it's very difficult at this current point in time to make any changes that would have the required impact from the 1st of July 2024. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. It's probably a question Gary can probably enlighten me on. I don't need an in-depth answer. Just going back to the principles of rating, why do we rate?
Oh, through you, Madam Mayor. Why do we rate? So council is an entity that is designed to provide a public good or a public service to the community. It's essentially, it creates a cohesive environment and provides services such as roading and libraries and all sorts of other things. And there's a number of other intangibles that public don't necessarily appreciate. As a way to provide the finance for council to be able to do that for the public, there needs to be some sort of mechanism to fund it, and that's achieved through the rating system. Now, the rating system itself is effectively a property tax. Now, there's any number of ways to cut the cake, but the government, through the Local Government Rating Act, has decided there are certain ways we can and can't achieve that. And so councils are then required to use the available mechanisms to determine the best way to cut that cake, to collect revenue in order to provide public goods and effectively public good and maintain the cohesiveness of the community. I hope that answers the question.
Yep, it does. You mentioned the word, through you, Madam Chair, property tax as opposed to wealth tax. So if it's a property tax, why do we not put our UAGC to its maximum amount to share that cost more equitably?
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor. So the UAGC is part of a group of fixed rates that are the council's has available to rate properties on. So the government acknowledged that there can be unintended consequences or an unbalancing of rating by allowing unfettered increases by council. And so they've limited the total amount to 30%. Part of the reason being is that property that has a higher than average value will disproportionately benefit from an increase in the UAGC. And so as an example, within this paper, I showed that if we were to increase the UAGC up to the limit of 30%, that some of the properties in Eskills would drop by 11.1% in their rates, whereas properties in likes of Maraenui would increase by another 7 or so percent. And so by increasing the fixed charges on properties, we push more of the rates burden onto those properties of lower values, which are typically in areas of low wealth. And so we talk about equity, and one of the things we do need to consider is people's ability to afford rates. And sometimes in those areas we have families that have very little in the way of income. So if we push more in terms of that rate onto those families, and we could see them losing their houses. We need to kind of balance these things out.
I'm just thinking that through, Madam Chair. So the reality is, it is a wealth tax.
It's a wealth tax via the value of somebody's property, and so typically you would find a wealthier person owning a wealthier property, more expensive property, I should say.
And your argument here in your paper against using the only tool that's available for us today is because we're shifting the burden from some wealthy people that are on fixed incomes to potentially lower income people that are on fixed incomes.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam
And
Chair.
sorry, I'm just going to intervene there because in order to change our UAGC percentage, that has to occur through the revenue and financing policy. Is that correct? We couldn't just do that as a...
No, we could do that through the rates resolution.
Okay, and we would not need to consult on it. It does not trigger the need to consult.
It would be, depending on the amount that it's increased, consultation may occur because it impacts everybody.
Yeah.
So it'd be advisable to consult on that if you were to do so.
Okay. Councillor Bogan.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to comment on the rates postponement scheme for older people. I came back from the Grey Power Conference last week, where one of the remits was to recommend to all LTTAs that they introduce such a policy as what we have, as I think only 18% of territorial authorities have that scheme. So I was very proud to wave ours around and say this is something we already have. From inquiries to you before I went there, it seems that there have only been 3 people that have utilised that opportunity, but I do appreciate it being something that we have provided for.
Thank you, Councillor Bogue. Question for myself, Gary. Obviously, there is the nationwide rates rebate scheme through central government. I have heard that there are some councils that actually have their own internal policy which allows for a larger rebate over and above that. Are you aware of that? Do you know of any councils that have their own policy?
This is something I've looked into previously, and I don't know of who would do that or how much they would provide. It's something we could certainly consider, but the rates rebate scheme itself is actually quite a burden on council to administer on behalf of the government. And so if we were to look at an option like that, we'd also need to look at the administrative costs and time required to do so, and then question how much and how that would work, whether it would be aligned with the government scheme or some other mechanism like that.
Thank you. Any further questions? That being the case, the officer's recommendation is to receive the report before us. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Simpson, Councillor Mawson, would you like to speak to that?
No, I think the report explains itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mawson.
Just to say this, that whilst it does look like is comprehensive but a relatively small report, I know there would have been a lot of work gone into this, so I just want to thank Gary and staff for their effort.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Also support the motion, and just wanted to say congratulations for getting that down to 4 pages, Gary. I think that for those who want to understand the very limited instruments and tools that we have available to us when it comes to setting rates like this, and the restraints that we have also with government and with legislation, those 4 pages are well worth a read. So, yeah, just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? So I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. And Gary, we have you up again. Actually, we've got you for the next. Oh no,
Just
just this one.
Yep.
Rating policy review.
Well, this one's more exciting than the last. So in this report, we're seeking council approval to update the rating policy. So detailed rating information is found in the funding impact statement for our annual plans, long-term plans, and also this 3-year plan. There's no legal requirement to maintain a rating policy, and public consultation is not required for this. However, by maintaining a rating policy, the information is more accessible to the public should they seek it out. Even for myself, when I'm digging through this information, it's difficult to find it unless you know what you're looking for. So it's more about that accessibility. To reflect the funding impact statement, some terminology around car parking rates has been changed. The general rate phasing was completed, so this has been removed. Rangatira revetment rate and a resilience rate have also been included. So I'll take the remainder of the paper as read.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions? Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification, if I can, Gary. The water rate, it says the rates recover the balance of the total net cost of the water supply system. So people who are not connected to the system and are not within the 100 metres to connect to the system, do they receive any charges related to water services through their general rate?
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, they don't. Now, something that does need to be clarified there, and I know this is a question that's been raised by one of the ratepayers, is around the use. So in some years, we may not fully fund the cost of that system or of that particular activity through the targeted rate. And where that occurs, we do actually borrow we do borrow to be able to provide that additional funding. So it may be shorter in 1 year, but we try to recover it in following years. So in that situation where we do have to borrow, that will effectively go into a pot, which may include, the general rate, that sort of thing. But the funding will come from that, but then there's a debt owed against that to be repaid. So technically, well, if you're looking at it straight up, it can come from the general rate, but there's an offset of a liability against that, which that activity needs to repay to that. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts longer term.
So the general rate is refunded by the fixed charge over time.
That's correct.
And the same would apply through you, Madam Chair, to the sewerage system?
Any activity that we have that is that can borrow internally or externally will have that feature.
Just changing tack through you, Madam Mayor, on the vehicle levy. The government changed the urban development housing policy, I can't see my notes, which allowed property developers to develop urban residential properties without off-street parking. Did we at any stage consider, in appropriate locations, establishing a charge through the vehicle levy to provide on-street parking in a different format?
That's well beyond my scope, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you.
Any further questions? Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Gregg, do you wish to speak to that?
Again, no, very happy with the way the policies are worded, formatted and presented, and reassurance from the staff. Thank you.
Councillor Gregg,
Thanks, Gary. It's good to see this policy reviewed. Thank you.
any further speakers? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Revenue and Financing Policy, Alistair Eadie and Caroline Thompson.
Morena.
Lena.
So we are discussing the Revenue and Financing Policy Amendment at this stage in the process because we wanted to consider the fees and charges first, which we have done as part of consultation and decided to go with our recommended scenario, which means less changes to the Revenue and Financing Policy. So the report provides a summary of that consultation feedback we received. And 52% of our submitters agreed with amending the policy as recommended, and 48% disagreed. And a quick summary of some of the comments of those who agreed with that was that the ratepayers shouldn't subsidise user pays activities, which is what we're trying to achieve in the Revenue and Financing Policy. So 3 submitters provided that comment. Some other comments on that debt borrowing should be spread over the longer term for these activities, which is what we do. Council should, do what it's good at and let users pay for specific non-public good activities. And there's also some comments that the rates increases weren't fair, but they're actually dealing with a different subject, so not quite relevant. There were similar comments on the other side of the ledger which didn't support the policy, saying rates increases were unfair, but that's a slightly different topic. And then also Ocean Spa came up, and we've discussed that in the consultation process, and we have implemented a Super Gold card discount for Ocean Spa, and we will consider Ocean Spa further with their pricing as part of our commercialisation process that we're undertaking. I can probably take the rest of that paper as read, and if you have any queries,
Excellent.
let me know.
Thank you, Alistair. Any questions? Councillor Crystal.
With regard to the Ocean Spa attachment C, on page 61, it says research has been undertaken, on the fees, but there's no actual timeline on this. And I know when Mayor Wise, because I went back and watched it, she actually asked for it to be done in the 2024-2025 year. So is that something we would add in there to make sure it's actually, it just says research is being done, as just that's a comment, I suppose. And the other thing is, in the fees and charges, the errors that Councillor Simpson pulled up of the commission, the 30 swim thing have not been amended. So it costs more to buy a 30 swim card than it does to buy a 10 swim card for adults and children.
For the aquatic centre, yes, I don't know if that has been updated.
No. Well, it's, and I just read
Okay,
it.
it hasn't been.
So it's $180 for 10 swims, and which is $18, and $18.66 for 30 swims for an adult, and for a child, $10.80 and $11.20. So obviously there's,
That's the concessions at Ocean Spa you're
yes,
referring to?
yes, Ocean Spa,
Ocean Spa, or,
yeah.
okay, well, I'll have to look into that further with the manager of Ocean Spa to check what they want to do with that. Do we have any comments?
On the 30 swim.
Currently 7.
Okay, we can amend that.
Yeah, we'll need to include in the resolution that adoption of this is subject to the amendment of the 30 swim concession card to reflect a 20% savings.
Calculation should be 10% on the 10 swim and 20%
20% discount on full price.
Yeah, it's the adults and children.
Just concession cards, because it'll cover everything. Yeah, okay. And sorry, what was the first part of your comment?
Just
Councillor
about
Costello?
the, it just says research is being done on the direction that council gave, but it
Yes.
doesn't actually have a timeline.
Yeah. And that's not specifically part of the resolution we're looking at either, so we might just make an action, and it is all tied up with that overarching commercialisation review, so if we could just have an action to, have some timelines put around that fees and charges review and brought back to council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the change we did make was put in the super gold discount, and
And
as
the
part of the
off-peak.
commercial process, we need to just investigate the
Yeah.
feasibility of doing more price changes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just flagging a conversation that Councillor Price had post the deliberations and asked that I raise it at this meeting. I think there's further work in his view to be undertaken between the stormwater levy and the rates and revenue policy review. And I just wonder if we could include as part of our resolution to direct officers to review the stormwater levy to coincide with the rates and revenue review for the 2025-26 year. Thank you.
And I think to be a little bit more specific, it was the stormwater levy and catchment map.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll add that as a C to the resolution. And just before I ask for a mover, are you happy to move, Deputy Mayor Brosnan? But I will just check if there's any other questions as well.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I do just have a question, just picking up on the conversation around Ocean Spa. As part of the commercial review, there was some concern raised in submissions around that 1,200 figure as a maximum occupancy for the gym. Could I get some clarification if that will be part of the commercialisation review, that actual pushing that occupancy to a market level, being looked at?
Madam Chair, well, that's, I can say that yes, we are going to review the 1,200 number, and yep, so we will. part of the process.
Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing the review.
Any other questions? No, so I have a mover with Deputy Mayor Brosnan. I'm happy to second from the chair. I'll pass across to you to speak to that, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. No specific comments from myself. It's good to see the work that the team has done in between the deliberations and this paper. Obviously, we have flagged as part of our deliberations a whole range of additional work to be undertaken in the coming financial year, which in particular we've had comment from councillors today on areas of focus. So, yeah, really happy to support the resolution, including the amendments that have been made and noted by the other councillors, and looking forward to seeing our resolutions come to life over the next year as we see those reviews come through. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I guess, yes, just to follow on from that, we've had some conversation already today from our first two agenda items around some of these levers that are available to us to, share the rate burden fairly across our community, and that is always what we are aiming to do. And I really do think that the place to look at that is through a full review of the revenue and financing policy, which then looks at the likes of fees and charges, differentials, UOGC, and you're looking at it as a complete picture rather than looking at things in isolation, which can end up with unintended consequences. So we have obviously flagged that we will be doing a full review of the revenue and financing policy in the 25-26 year. So I do look forward to doing that. And just it's really important that we do have these regular check-ins to make sure that our rating system is working fairly for the whole of our community. So, and happy to adopt the policy as it stands. Are there any further speakers to the motion? I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much, Alistair and Caroline. And next up, we have Paulina and the financial contributions. All the policies today, all the exciting stuff.
Yes. Morena, everyone.
Morena.
So my report today seeks to the endorsement of the financial contribution policy. The financial contribution policy has been reviewed. The function of this policy is to fund the assets and level of services that cater for growth, either residential growth and business growth as well, for the future. We haven't done substantial changes to this financial contribution policy, and it is, as you would have read in the report, we received about 13 submissions to the policy when it went out for consultation together with the long-term plan, and we have made some amendments and minor corrections in relation to those submissions, but the direction of the financial contribution policy, the strategic direction, still stays the same. And the main gist of the financial contribution is to support intensification and growth around commercial centres and around our CBD, recognizing that there are added benefits by providing that intensification of city vibrancy, better use of resources, better use of the existing infrastructure in this already built area. So that part of the policy is still embedded in the review and is continuing from the policy that has been ruling for the last 3 years. Other than the other thing that I want to note as well is that there would be the financial contributions amount are based on an essential services plan that was done in 2000, and the plan for the next few years is to review that and to adjust those figures. But at the moment, we have done the review of the figure according to the actual cost, despite that the essential level service level hasn't been reviewed, and is pretty accurate. So the figures in the financial contribution policy have been adjusted according to the PPI, but it hasn't been a whole review of that essential service level plan, infrastructure plan. And I would take any questions.
Thanks, Paulina. Open up for any questions from councillors. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Paulina, are you able just to give us a status update on financial contributions versus development contributions for Napier?
Yeah, absolutely. Development contributions are considered under the Local Government Act, and financial contribution, you have the option to use, to charge them under the RMA. At the moment, we have a financial contribution chapter in the district plan, and we use that mechanism, the chapter of the district plan, that goes together with this policy to charge that. In the future, once you know your growth plan for the next 30 years, and you understand which are the growth areas and the infrastructure and asset needed to support that growth, in detail, you're able to actually move into a development contribution policy, which is very transparent and enable you to charge the amount that you need to support that growth. So there's different mechanisms, but that you can choose to use. And at the moment, because we are developing a future development strategy at the moment that would be ready by the end of this year, we are not in a position to move into development contribution policy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to follow up on that with a question from myself. So would it be fair to say that Council's current position, because I note this was the subject of some of the submissions to the policy, so Council's current position is that we will continue with the use of financial contributions until such time as we have our future development strategy finalised and agreed, and then we will move into development contributions, which will replace?
That would
Financial
come to council
contributions?
for consideration. So definitely when we're at that stage, we would assess which one is the preferred option. We will go out to consultation and the council can decide to move into development contribution policy.
Right, so you, through you, Madam Chair, don't have a staff recommendation on that pathway as of yet. You'd wait until
We will wait
those
until,
steps in the
yes.
process. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, that was helpful clarification.
Thank you. Paulina, just going back to you spoke about this essential services plan, which is going to be reviewed, and obviously acknowledging that we have been doing an annual adjustment based on the year 2000 essential services plan. Do we have a timeline around that essential services plan, how long that's going to take to be able to, to inform this in the future?
We have just started scoping the project, so I would say that it's definitely a longer term rather than a shorter term, but in the next long-term plan, we would have all the information available to be able to review the financial contribution policy.
Okay, great, thank you. Any further questions? Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Just noting that part C of this recommendation is actually been removed. It was surplus to requirements, so it's just part A to note the summary of feedback and B to endorse the policy. If I could have, thank you, Councillor Gregg and Councillor Crystal. Would you like to speak to that?
No, thank you. Thanks for the report.
Thank you,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Crystal.
Thank you, Paulina, and I look forward to moving on with this after our FDS is done.
Yeah.
Exactly. Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thanks so much, Paulina.
Thank you.
Rightio. On to the big one, adoption of the 3-year plan, 2024-27. And we have Danica and Steph. And Jess.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So the report's pretty straightforward, so I will take that as read, but I just had one thing to note. So it's related to the draft full 3-year plan document that's under separate cover 1, the attachment, 2, sorry. Volume 2, page 31, the borrowing program table. There's just a couple of incorrect figures in there that Finance have noticed. It's just a design error really, and it doesn't actually have any financial impact on anything else. And that'll be updated before publishing.
Excellent, thank you. And I note our recommendation does include the ability for minor edits to be made, so it'll be covered in that. So thank you very much. I think we are all very, very familiar and know what's in this 3-year plan. Just a reminder, we're not here to relitigate any decisions. We already have council resolutions in terms of providing the input to finalise the document that's in front of us today, and it is adoption of the document that we are actually moving forward with. So on that note, I will open up for any questions. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you very much, team, for the paper. I just have, I suppose, a question about the wording in the paper itself that I wanted to sort of raise with you. And so my statement is under 5.3, where there's been an officer's summary of the deliberations. I found that difficult to read because I think, as you would appreciate, a lot of our deliberations had lots of detail. You know, our resolutions had lots of detail, and appreciate that's quite hard to summarise. But what I found, I suppose, frustrating was I don't think the summaries fully captured in areas all of the resolutions that we had made. And so I just wanted to get certainty from you that when officers are looking to implement the resolutions in the LTP, we are going back to the deliberations. We're not looking at summary of the deliberations. If you know what I mean, it's not so much of a criticism, it's just when I was reading them, I'm like, oh, there was a little bit more information in there that's really important. You know, maybe some timeframes, maybe a word here or there. When we talk about leases, we're actually talking about market leases. When we're talking, you know, about this, we're you know, there was some nuance in there that probably wasn't captured in the summaries.
Yes, I think we can give you certainty that we have captured all of the detail from the deliberations in the actual LTP proper. We may have summarised a little too heavily in the paper, but yes, I can give you that certainty.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, those summaries won't be used in any forum outside of this paper. For instance, they're not part of the communication back to submitters that we're proposing?
No, we will make sure that we go into enough detail when we're communicating back to the submitters.
Cool. Thank you for giving me that.
Yeah, and thanks for that feedback. Yeah, it's useful.
You. Any further questions? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you for this, and obviously huge amounts of work that's gone into it. When I look at our plan, obviously we've got our 5 strategic priorities. When you work through it, yes, we can see how little bits and pieces contribute to it, but it's quite hard to get that overall picture of what we're doing under each priority. Can you please talk me through what the process is going to be going forward around how we'll communicate that with the city and with us as councillors?
So we will be reporting on a quarterly basis in terms of our performance against the long-term plan through our quarterly performance reporting, and that will align our performance measures against our strategic priorities. So I think that that will respond to that query.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. When we did the hearings on the long-term plan, or the short long-term plan, we assured residents that had been significantly affected by significant rates increases that we'd use every lever that we could to alleviate the significant impact for some. Have we done that in this plan?
I believe we have. So we certainly have worked with elected members through multiple workshops in terms of financial budgeting, in terms of how we've reduced that rate increase down to 19.9%. So in terms of the levers that we've pulled around user pays, we've looked at reducing our operating costs. We've obviously put some cost-saving targets in there. Yeah, I do think we have looked at all the levers that we've pulled. We've looked at borrowing, looked at spreading the costs over periods of time. I do, yeah, from my perspective, I think we have.
Through you, Madam Mayor, at this stage in the process, do we have the opportunity to adjust our general uniform annual charge, AUGC?
To do that now, we would need to go back and we would need to remodel our rates impact. That's something that you could look at in terms of your annual plan process for next year, but we would not be able to do that today in terms of adopting the 3-year plan today.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Madam Chair, in the deliberations, we gave some direction to the Chief Executive around leave loading in particular and essentially cutting money from our staff budgets. I just wonder, at that stage we were talking percentages. Louise, are you in a position to tell us what the dollar figure is? And maybe you could come back to us on this. I know you'd been doing a little bit of work on it around how much we are actually removing from our staff lines. It was
I can recall those figures. So if we combine the 1.75% savings that we brought into the deliberations resolution with the existing 10% vacancy provision, which was carried forward from last year's annual plan, the dollar value of savings is approximately $5.8 million over the financial year.
That's quite significant.
It's very significant, and we do need to acknowledge that, obviously, that our team will have to be working really hard to do that, and also, you know, making every endeavour to ensure that it does not affect the level of service to our community.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You can tell I'm an accountant. I remember all the numbers. Any further questions? Any general discussion before I move on? And I will be moving from the chair for the adoption of our 3-year plan. And seconded by Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Look, I just want to say a huge thank you to all the team, staff, elected members, everybody that's been involved in this process, the community that came to us with their feedback, their thoughts, their concerns. And obviously through the deliberation process, we were able to reduce that proposed rates increase from 23.7 to 19.95. It is going to be challenging to do that, and we do need to acknowledge that the concern of the community, but at the same time, the need for us to be able to operate in a financially sustainable way, to be able to invest in our staff, to be able to invest in our infrastructure. And none of that is cheap, unfortunately, in our current economic environment. So I think we have arrived at a 3-year plan that enables us to move forward in a proactive way, yet at the same time, we were able to acknowledge those concerns that were brought to us from our community. And we will continue to work to identify as many efficiencies and savings as we can going forward, and reflect that in future year rate increases as we move through the 3-year plan. So very happy to adopt the plan in front of us today, and thanks to everyone involved. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Happy to reserve.
I'll open up for any other speakers. Wow. Oh, Councillor McGrath.
Doesn't seem that anyone else wants to speak yet, so I will. Through the chair, I'm voting against the adoption of the long-term plan today, and it's for a few different reasons. One is my position hasn't changed on the CCOs. I believe we, start in-house first and then look to see how that goes. And secondly, I'm not a supporter of the library project, although I'm not allowed to sit here and relitigate it apparently, so that might take a little bit out of what I've got to say here. I think we've got better options or different options right now, I'm concerned that we're putting a library ahead of our infrastructure. If you've been out on the streets in the last few days, you may have actually walked through sewerage that's been bubbling up in our streets, and specifically Wycliffe Street, right outside of school, right outside of Family Centre. Now, we've known about that as a council since at least 2018, and we've tried and been told that would be fixed twice, and it hasn't. The next fix, I think, is 3 or 4 years away. I don't see how we can put a library ahead of putting public safety as our first priority. I absolutely struggle with that, to the degree that I'm surprised we haven't been prosecuted. In April, the Hawke's Bay Today said that Hastings had been prosecuted for sewerage out on the street. we still don't seem to want to put it as our first and top priority. And that really concerns me for our community. I'm going to skip a few here. The next one is part of our job is and also covers other risks, and that's the organisation's ability to deliver such a large project or two large projects at over $100 million. Our last biggest project was $30 million, and that was back in 2014. Since then, a lot of our projects have actually gone over time and over budget, some by over 100%. And you'll see later on coming up on the audit and risk, there was a report done on our procurement and contract delivery, for a better term. I think it was the Crow report, that says we've still got a long way to go or a lot of work to do before we have things right. Yet we're running straight into a $100+ million project, and I don't think our organisation is quite ready for that. So we do have options. We don't have to run forward at a great rate of knots, and it was said that you need notices of motion to stop projects, and I agree with that. But the council has the ability to delay projects, as we would have seen in the past, where we either slowed or stopped things like velodromes, pools, $110 million aquariums, and even Te Pahinga, which hasn't technically been stopped, but it keeps getting pushed out. We may have agreed to it, but we have pushed it out. So we do have options to stop and slow and do various things. So I'm just going to leave it at that and see where it goes.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Could I just have an action out of Councillor McGrath's? I would just personally like to have a report back to us on that Wycliffe Street issue so that we have an understanding of exactly what the situation is there, what risks there are to us. So if we could make that note of that as an action, please. Thank you. Councillor Bogue.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. I'm in favour of the three-year plan, but I did want to reflect on some of the submitters' concerns about the size of our rates increase and the fact that we made no changes to our capital program. There were some very positive aspects of that plan that I appreciated, such as keeping the pensioners' villages and other aspects of it. But in a time of cost of living crisis and a housing crisis, everyone being told to tighten their belts, it seemed to me that our $1.1 billion capital program over the next 10 years had many submitters scratching their heads. So personally, I was sad we didn't make a distinction between the must-haves in that capital plan and the nice-to-haves, or canning some of those things or putting them on a hold. So while I'm supporting the three-year plan, I'm just sorry that staff, who I consider our most valuable asset, are the ones who are making such a significant contribution to bringing our rates down.
Thank you, Councillor Bogue. Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm speaking in support of the three-year plan, and also want to acknowledge the amount of mahi that was done by our staff. Councillor Bogue has reminded me of some of the workshops that we had around our capital plan. At that stage, our workshops weren't publicly available to our community, but I did ask for numbers as to the values of the projects that were removed from our capital plan or pushed out. So in year one, we actually removed or delayed $73.53 million worth of projects. Year two, $104.44 million. And year three, $34.53 million worth of projects. So there was considerable amount of mahi done in order to get that capital spend down, which of course has flow-on effect to our rating level. I'm not sure that we perhaps communicated that as clearly as we could have to our community when we were trying to assure them that we had pulled the levers that we could. But right now is the opportunity to provide that assurance that those are the massive numbers that we actually did reduce that capital spend by, or potential capital spend by. So, yeah, I understand that the economic environment at the moment is a pressure cooker for people, and I guess our job is to try and balance the needs and the goodwill around grants and central government funding that we have and projects that are already in play, which we would lose money out on if we didn't continue with, and make those hard decisions.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I struggle not with the annual plan, because I think it is very important that as a council we carefully strategise over the resilience and the sustainability of the programs and the deliveries and the other activities that this council deliver to our ratepayers. What I struggle with is our inability to join policies together and ensure that we end up with fair and equitable outcomes. And the bit that I struggle with is the disproportionate rates increases that some ratepayers are facing as a result of poor policy making that built up to this process. And that's why I asked the questions I have today around using the UAGC as a lever. And I don't believe that we have actually looked at that as a mechanism to create an equitable rate share in this annual plan. But I don't speak against the annual plan on the basis that we need to continue to deliver the capital improvements to make our city resilient. We need to ensure that we don't stop and go projects to ensure that we have a sustainable service delivery model. But as I say, I just really struggle with the fact, and I'm pleased that we will review the policies that underpin the annual plan process to ensure that we end up with a more equitable rate system going forward. So I actually speak in favour of the annual plan for the programs and the deliverables that it seeks to deliver.
Thank you. We've had 3 speak in favour of the motion. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against? No, I'll pass back to Deputy Mayor for her reserved right to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep it brief. I think, councillors have shared a good range of views, not only today, but over the deliberations and all the key topics we covered as part of our previous meeting. As I reflect on some of the comments that councillors have made in this meeting, I think the things that pop into my mind is first that council is mandated by central government to cover those 4 wellbeings, and no one knows more so than elected members that someone's top priority is your neighbour's absolute bottom priority, and our role is to find that middle ground. So when something is of real importance to someone, it is of low importance to someone else. And that is actually the beauty of a community, that we have all of those different views. So I fundamentally disagree with the assertion that was made that community projects are being put ahead of infrastructure projects. I personally, through all of the investigation we've done, through the workshops, the lead up, the deliberations, know that not to be the case. So I am personally very confident to say that I do not believe that to be the case. I think when Councillor Simpson talked about poor policy making and the equitable rate share, the thing that comes into my mind is the line of questioning you had to staff earlier, Councillor Simpson, around what is a rate, and it is a tax. And quite often we are challenged to make our rates user pays. We have people in our rural community saying, but I don't have streetlights or I don't have footpaths. But actually the reality is that if you don't use the health system, you still pay for it. If you don't use the education system, you still pay for it. When you live in a democracy and a community, there is a portion of what we pay in tax that goes to the wider community good. So I'm interested in that review. I look forward to participating in it. But I think equitable rate systems doesn't always mean user pays. So I'm obviously speaking in support of the adoption of the LTP. I really appreciate all of the comments that councillors have made. I appreciate all of the effort that staff have made to accommodate all of those questions and work us through in a really methodical way all of the savings we could possibly achieve. I acknowledge Councillor Bogue's point around the contribution that staff lines have made to the reduction in our rates. And I think when I put that in context for us regionally and nationally, it's really easy to look at percentages and point at them and go, that's a really high percentage, and it is. But when you put it in context regionally, we are still significantly less than our counterparts across the river in terms of our average residential rate, which is our key comparison. And then when I look at us nationally, we talk about this a lot as a council. As a council, we receive only a small proportion of what households pay in tax. And for what we deliver inside our cities, I believe our ratepayers get a good service from Napier City Council. When you look at our parks, our reserves, our public spaces, our community facilities, some of which we are investing in over the life of this plan, I believe our community gets good bang for buck out of the average residential rate that they pay for us. So, yeah, on that note, I will pass back over to you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. So the end of a very long process. So feels good to be able to adopt this today to set us up for our next work year. So on that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand so that we are very clear. Thank you, Councillor McGuigan.
Anyone else?
Carried. Thanks, Danica. Thank you, Jess. Much appreciated. So it's certainly all about the rates today. And next up, we have Gary back for the 24-25 rates resolution.
Hello again. So in this report, we're seeking adoption of the rates proposed for the 24-25 financial year. So this is an administrative process required under Section 23 of the Local Government Rating Act and follows on from Council adopting the 3-year plan. I'll take the paper as read in depth.
Thank you very much, Gary. Any questions? Any general discussion? Otherwise, I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Gregg. Would you like to speak to that? Or any, sorry, yeah.
No, just procedurally, apologies, procedurally, the next step is part of adopting the LTP. I spoke previously about those rates increases, and so I'm quite happy to support the next step in that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you again, Gary, for all the reports today. Thank you.
Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, a bit of a change and shift in conversation now. Next agenda item is the representation review initial proposal. So I'd invite Anna and Jane to come and present the paper to us.
Kia ora koutou. So the paper before you, the purpose of this report is to consider the Napier City Council initial proposal for representation arrangements for the 2025 and 2028 elections. There are a number of things which need to be considered today for the initial proposal. These are the basis of election, full wards or a mixture of ward and at-large councillors, ward configurations and names, council size, and whether to establish a community board. Once the initial proposal is decided, the decision will be publicly notified and distributed for formal consultation. If there were no submissions on the initial proposal, then the decision made today would become the final proposal under the Local Electoral Act. So we're putting 3 alternatives for general wards to you for consideration after comprehensive pre-engagement with the public and yourselves. And these are all based on a ward-only basis of election with no at-large elected members. We are also putting to you suggestions for general ward names to consider. And if further modelling was required, if you decided to, that the options we've put before you today are not quite what you would like to see go through to the initial proposal, we will need to go back to Statistics New Zealand to get remodelling done. So just that would take approximately, very approximately a week, and means we would need to push out the consultation times and hearings, just so you have that information. We've got until the 8th of August to publicly notify an initial proposal. So till about the end of July for a decision on initial proposal. We are recommending one citywide Māori ward with 2 elected Māori ward councillors with the name Te Whanga. But this name, as part of the consultation, will be going to a Kahui Kaumātua group for confirmation that they are happy with that. We are not recommending establishing a community board, but have outlined other options for your consideration in the paper. We did present these options to Ngā Mānukunuku o Te Iwi committee last week, and they gave us some really good feedback. So they were of the opinion that for the Māori ward, one citywide Māori ward with 2 Māori ward councillors would serve the Māori electoral population best. With, again, that ward name Te Whanga, they were quite happy with. For the general ward options, their preference was for the 4-ward option, which is the one closest to what we currently have. They felt that would create the least confusion for the community, that it provides good representation, and they added a couple of suggestions for ward names as well. Hei Pipi Pipi or Matarua Hau, or a combination of those for the current Ahuriri ward. But their suggestion was to keep it simple. Any new Te Reo Māori names for wards that were decided that are decided on today, we would also put to the Kahui Kaumātua group before the final proposal, just to confirm that they are comfortable with those. They were not in favour of a community board for Marae Nui. The reasoning was they felt this was too formal and an unnecessary extra layer of governance, and they felt it was a double up of things that are already happening from that community, the interaction between that community and council. And they expressed quite strongly that they have good young leaders coming through in that community, and they felt that it would be a better idea to strengthen those relationships and feed information from council through those avenues rather than through a community board. So things like utilising the youth council or something similar to get messaging through to the community. So the options that we're putting to you today for your consideration, these are the current ward boundaries. So we're looking at something very similar for the 4-ward option, just with slight changes to the light green ward, the Bupa Retirement Village being included, and the Te Awa Avenue developments, and the dark green ward that's going right up to just below Humber Street. The 2-ward option we're putting to you, and a 3-ward option. which has a relatively even spread of councillors per ward. And then the Te Whanga Māori ward, proposed citywide ward. If you did decide today to go with the Maraenui Community Board, we have given an option for this. With just for the boundaries of Maraenui is defined the statistical area of Maraenui suburb with 4 elected members, which is the minimum allowed under the Act, and 2 appointed, one from the relevant general ward and one from the Māori ward. And suggesting it could be an advisory board with a small budget, say $5,000, for them to allocate to local projects. We welcome any questions you may have about any of the things put to you in the paper today.
Thank you, Anna. I'll open up for questions, please. Councillor Brown.
Just a procedural question, I suppose. Do we need to agree on names today? So, yeah. And just, was there any recommendations if we were changing the ward names? Just, there wasn't, is there any more recommendations than what's currently in the paper?
What I've included in the paper is the ones that have been suggested either by through discussion with yourselves, by the project team, and I've just added in those couple from the Māori committee that they mentioned last week. There are some naming conventions we need to abide by, which I've included in the paper. So just we need to take those into consideration. So if you wanted to have, for example, directional names like North Ward, we need to identify that it's Napier North Ward so that it doesn't get confused with all the other North Wards in the country.
Sorry, it was probably a bit of a poorly worded question. For the 2 ward and 3 ward options, have you specified recommended names for each of those wards?
We've given you options in the paper for those.
I must have, yep.
At the moment, we have, for example, for the 3 ward option, the Ahuriri ward or Titai ward are the 2 options for consideration, Napier Central ward or Te Whenua ward, and then Taradale ward or Otatara ward. I'm referring to my summary, sorry.
Oh, so it's on page 163 of the attachments document. So yes, the 2 ward.
Thank you.
Have you found it?
Yeah, no, I can find it now. Thanks. Sorry,
Okay.
it's just
That's all good. There's a lot of paper there.
There's a lot of paper. Oh, these ones?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, so you will also find on the hub, we have, for each option, the team has very kindly drafted up the full recommendation resolution, because we have to cover off an incredible amount of information and points to ensure that we meet the legislative requirements. So you will find those on the hub, which gives you some of that additional detail around proposed names, etc. So.
Thanks. I knew we'd discuss that, I just couldn't find it,
Yeah.
so thanks.
Councillor Bogan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just procedurally, and I haven't got the hub in front of me, but it seems to me that the process would be to adopt whichever ward model we prefer first, and then decide yay or nay on the community board, and then decide on the name or names of whatever ward model we have chosen. Would that be right?
That's a very logical way to work through it. Thank you,
Not
Councillor Bogan.
necessarily in that order. I mean, the names and the community board.
So we don't have an officer's recommendation around these options. This is something that clearly sits with us. So if there's no further questions, Councillor Taraha.
Sorry. Thank you, Your Worship. Just regarding the recommendation put forward by Ngāma Nukunuku o Te Iwi, can you confirm that they have a representative from Maraenui? And if so, how many? Was it at least one, or did they have a couple?
On the committee?
Yes.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. We have Tiwana Aranui. Yep. I couldn't tell you whether the others, I think Cheyenne may live in Maraenui here. And Tiwana was quite firm about the community board.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Good question, Councillor Taraha. Okay. There's no further questions. I'll open up for discussion. Councillor Bogue.
Can I move a recommendation?
You certainly can.
I'd like to recommend that we adopt the 4-ward model, the status quo. I need a seconder.
We have a seconder. Councillor McGrath.
Can we put it on screen?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
The option.
This is the recommendation that Ngāma Nukunuku endorsed, and I certainly endorse it for many reasons that I'd like to explain. Familiarity.
Can you put the mic on?
Check, check.
Thanks.
Right, so familiarity. The city's embraced and accepted the current setup. It's been in place for 17 years. People are familiar with it and generally feel comfortable with it. Because obviously they were not interested in reverting to the at-large or even the mixed ward system in our pre-consultation. Issues were raised about the size. This option provides one larger, it's a slightly larger option than the others. But as the officers' reports have pointed out, a larger council costs us no more and it ensures slightly better representation than a smaller one. I think big changes could further disincentivise voters, confuse and annoy them even. Our voter turnout is low enough as it is, at 39.5% at the last election. So how will making big changes to our ward system encourage people to vote? It's another barrier, as I see it. All the other options put Nelson Park Ward and the Onikawa Tamatea wards together, both sides of Kennedy Road, which I initially thought was a good idea. But this arrangement, I believe, for some residents will create another barrier to participation. And I'd like to specifically mention that Maraenui is the home of the Red Whānau, otherwise known as the Mongrel Mob, Tamatea, Black Power, the Blue Whānau. Combining those two, Maraenui and Tamatea in one ward, will not resolve their differences, and it could be another barrier to participation. Best to keep them separate. Imagine ward meetings in Maraenui or Tamatea. So people also suggested that the Māori ward would capture both parties, but I see from the figures that you had in your document that 49% of Māori voters are on the general roll. So that's an important fact as well. So basically, I think the status quo has served us well. I like the tweaks that have been made to it. And basically, if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Thank you, Councillor Bogue. Councillor McGrath.
Just through the chair, not a lot to actually add to that. I like what Maxine's saying, actually. I'm surprised as well, Max. Yeah, look, it's the chopping and changing, I can't use the word, and bluffing that I think our communities, you know, it's part of how and why they're not trusting of us in recent years. It just, yeah, I'd like to stick to whatever's closest to the status quo. It does put an extra councillor in there. Is it a bad thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't see it as a bad thing. In fact, depending on how the mayor of the day hands out roles and responsibilities, it may actually help cover for not having a board. So, yeah, I support Maxine.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through the Mayor. May I speak in favour of option 4 with the 3 wards?
No, we will continue with
okay.
this, and then if it isn't passed, we can put forward another.
Okay, may I just speak in reply to Councillor Vogue? I think maybe, getting people into the room where we can all discuss together, should we be keeping people separate? I think as a council, we want to get people talking together, and I think the argument about keeping people separate because they might not get on, we want people to get on, and they won't get on until they get into the same room. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Open to other speakers. Okay, if we have no further speakers. Oh, sorry, Councillor Brown.
Kia ora. I'm speaking against the motion, and I suppose just to rebut some of the points that were raised by Councillor Vogue. And I do see where her intention's going, and I don't think this is necessarily a bad option to stay with the status quo. However, I do think that there is a better one with the 3-ward solution. With the Māori wards, this does increase our number of councillors by another person, and I don't think any of us have all 5,000-ish community members coming to us at any one point. So I find the premise that having an extra councillor increases representation to be a little bit academic, because I think there is capacity within all of us to take on more from our community in terms of that local representation and them having their voice to us. I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you. There's no further speakers, and I do just want to check in before I put the motion. I've just noticed that the officer's recommendation in the agenda item has a point B, consider how its representation arrangements can best provide for the fair and effective representation, which, can we just check, because I think that has dropped off in this amended. Yeah, but in the paper, that B is C, and there's an additional B in there.
Are you referring to the
So the agenda paper.
the number 2 in our agenda is not included in that?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
the B.
Yeah, not really. Oh, yeah, option 1, yes. Just looking at what she's doing. So that's yeah.
What pages? Oh, I see.
So that's a
D is the direct, yeah. Excellent, thank you. Just give everyone a moment if they do need to scan through that very detailed resolution. And noting that this particular option, we've only been given one suggestion in terms of ward names, so that would, we would also be voting on accepting those names as part of this resolution. And
This is, sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. So this is a real draft, so you can amend anything in there. If you want to change the ward names, that's fine.
Could that be dealt with separately?
In a separate
we would
vote,
need
do you
to, I think we can, if you want to debate it now before we vote on although you've already put forward this recommendation as what you've moved, but I'm happy to actually open that up for further discussion if both the mover and seconder are happy to accept that we're just going to carry on the debate to look at the names. And I guess that would also be looking at the community boards, Councillor Bogue, and then we can move it all as one.
Right, well, if I could speak to those
Yes,
issues?
yep.
Okay. I think the names as they are understood. I know there's some issues around Nelson Park, but I have really asked a lot of people for other suggestions for the name of that ward that would best represent the particular groups of suburbs that are involved in that ward, and nobody has actually come up with anything better. So even though a significant proportion of people in Maraenui don't necessarily know they're in Nelson Park ward, I just don't think there's a better option at this stage. With the community board, I will go with the suggestion, the recommendation that came from Ngāma Nukunuku, who have representation from Maraenui. And from what I've heard in the particular area, I understand when we workshopped it that there were issues about why Maraenui should have a community board when other areas shouldn't have one, and that there are other effective ways of ensuring representation for that special part of the city. So do you want me to do my right of reply, or is it if there's nobody else speaking? Or?
I'll just check in with Councillor McGrath. So what you seconded hasn't changed anyway, so you're fine with the further conversation around names and community board?
Yep, so the names were as is?
As is?
Yep.
And no community board?
Happy with that? Yep.
Very good. Yes, your right of reply, Councillor Bogue.
Just briefly, on the issue of having an extra councillor rather than some of the other options, I think people don't necessarily realise out there that it's not going to cost us any more. And I do believe that one more councillor provides better representation. It's a wider range of members representing the city. The suggestion that putting gang members in the same room is going to make them get along better, I think, hasn't worked so far. There have been efforts to do that, but I don't think that's necessarily an appropriate way of resolving either those issues or getting the ward together. That's what concerns me about some of the other wards. It would stop the wide range of people within the ward getting together in the same room. And finally, I'm glad that Ngāma Nukunuku o Te Iwi recommended this particular option. They are an important consultative body, and I'm very pleased to be supporting their recommendation and opting for basically a slightly tweaked status quo.
Thank you, Councillor Bogue. I will now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye or raise your hands, because I suspect we might have a bit of a split vote here. So against is the balance, so that motion is not passed. So some rapid fire. So Simpson, Mawson, Tariha, Brown, Brosnan, Gregg, Crown, Taylor. Yeah. Okay, so the motion does not pass. So I would now invite for a motion to be put on the table for debate and discussion. Okay, if no one else is going to do it, I would like to put forward.
Would you like to revisit the first one?
I would like to put forward the option 4, 3 wards without community board. And there's a number of reasons that I am proposing this option. During our extensive pre-engagement, this particular option was the most supported by our community. I think it reflects well communities of interest.
You require a seconder.
Oh, I do require a seconder. Councillor Taylor, thank you very much. And I fully understand Councillor Bogue and you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But at the same time, I think if there is good reasons to change and if it's supported by our community, then we should be doing that. And for those reasons, I'm happy to be the mover of this. So, Councillor Taylor, I invite you to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in agreement with the points that you've already made. I would like to support the fact that the names are as published, and so that also that there is no community board. I'm in favour of a slightly smaller council rather than a larger council, and this option provides for that. We still have a degree of uncertainty around what will occur as far as the introduction of Māori wards how that will impact, and I think that this is supported by our community, a slightly smaller council, and therefore I support this option for.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And actually, just before I invite other speakers, we do need to just include in this resolution around the naming, because we do have the two options included in the draft resolution. So we have, similar to what our existing ward names are, Ahuriri Ward and the Taradale Ward, and then just with the renaming of the Napier Central Ward. And then we have the Titai Ward or the Te Whenua Ward or the Otata Ward as the second option. I would like to propose that we stick with the Ahuriri Ward, Napier Central Ward and Taradale Ward. Are you happy to support that as seconder?
That's what I was referring to.
That's what I thought. It's what reminded me that I hadn't actually clarified that in the resolution. So. Councillor Gregg.
Oh yes, through the Mayor, I'd like to speak in support of changing the ward names to Te Reo Māori to match the...
Yes, so that means you're going to speak against what we've currently got as the...
Okay, yeah, so I'd like to speak against, and yeah. For the reason that they would all match if we had the Māori ward as Te Whanga, and then we'd have Te Tai, Te Whenua and Otatara, and they'd all match, and it would be, I mean, that just sounds beautiful. That's my main reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Councillor Taraha.
Kia ora. I speak in support. I'm opposed to an extra councillor. I support citywide Māori ward with 2 Māori ward councillors. I support no community board. And although I contributed to put in Te Whenua and Te Tai ward forward, really they just placeholders, and yeah, so it's what the community would know and doesn't really change much. And can I also just mention that I think that adding the extra councillor would actually cost us, I believe it'll cost and maybe quality of councillors, and yeah, so again, I speak in support of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Tariha. Councillor McGrath.
Through the chair, through the mayor, through the chair, can I just ask you a question? You said, just to clarify earlier, that was a majority of people supported this one. Do you have actual numbers of the community as opposed to a percentage that supported this?
Through the Mayor, I can look that up for you if you bear with me.
We can carry on while that's being searched up.
Okay. Councillor Simpson.
Through you, Madam Chair, I speak in favour of the motion. I think less in some cases is more, and I think sticking with the names that people are more familiar with, I think has an advantage. But it also, this model also presents for us a balanced council into the future.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, kia ora. I speak in support of the motion. I won't run through everything, but I suppose in terms of the naming, I was quite in favour at the start of changing the Ahuriri ward name because we do get feedback that it's confusing. We are Napier Ahuriri, or Ahuriri Napier, and then we have a suburb that's Ahuriri, and then we have a ward that's Ahuriri. But through conversations with Councillor Price, who's the other ward councillor in this space, and I think Te Tai being the east is a perfect representation of our ward, and so I do really like that. But having conversations with our my fellow councillor in this space, we do think that keeping the Ahuriri ward name makes more sense in the long term in terms of reducing change. So although I love the Māori names, I do think that for where we're at right now, keeping where we're at makes more sense. I'm supportive of a smaller council. Our submissions said our community support a smaller council. I like that it's a more even split of councillors, and I'm optimistic that we can find better ways of increasing the issues we have around engagement with the Maraenui community over in other ways other than a community board. So fully in support.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. We have had 3 speak in support of the motion. Is there, and we have the information that's been requested.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. So out of 702 responses in our last pre-engagement, 197 preferred option 4. And that's 28% of the respondents.
Didn't support it to some degree. It's only 28%.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, can I ask a question? And that is, had a hybrid of our existing and Māori names been considered, for instance, Napier Central, Te Whenua Ward, Taradale Otatara Ward, and Ahuriri Te Tai Ward?
That has not been considered, and I think as the mover of the motion, my concern would be that you're actually starting to get very long ward names. So, yeah, I would not be supportive of adjusting the motion for that. Councillor Taylor, any different views?
No, I think the points that have been made is that we, as much as those Māori names are attractive, the public needs to be able to identify and remove some of the confusion. If we're changing the wards in size and representation, I think it's just going to make it more difficult with changing names as well.
Okay. Is it a question, Councillor Bogue? No?
I want to speak against it.
Oh, against?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, I won't reiterate all the other reasons I gave for my previous suggestion, but it does concern me the actual size of the Ahuriri ward, which goes from Bayview through to Paraiate right down to Awatoto. And I think it's going to be it's a bit like the at-large situation. It's going to be very costly for someone to advertise and to get known in all those communities. And it seems to me community of interest, perhaps, obviously, there are things that they have in common, but the actual breadth of it really disturbs me. It's a huge ward, and you'll have fewer councillors servicing and representing the city citywide, so I'm speaking against it.
Any further speakers? Councillor McGrath.
I'll be consistent and speak against this also. Size of the council, we've had 14 before, and I don't recall any major issues relating to the number of it. And was it 197 out of 790? Yeah, we can call it. We can play with statistics all we like.
Any further speakers? Okay. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, everybody. It's been a very long process to get where we are, and obviously
Community, have we decided on community board? Sorry.
It was no community board, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
So thank you to Jane and Anna. I know that you have spent many, many hours compiling all this information and that it's, we have to follow a very prescriptive process, thus the resolution we have in front of us. So I really appreciate all the work that you've done on this and look forward to going out for consultation with our community to hear their views before we actually adopt our new representation model. So thanks, everybody. Right, and our next agenda item is the CCTV policy updates, and we've got Duncan with us. Welcome, Duncan.
Morena and good morning.
Morena.
So presenting today is the Information Services CCTV policy. It's an administrative update to it. The key changes have been we've added the ability to do number plate licence recognition. We've broadened our scope from the police to legal enforcement agencies, and we've updated some of those internal roles and positions. We've also done some benchmarking with Hastings, Hamilton and the police and their policies, and I think we're pretty well up to scratch in that. So I'll take the report as read. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Duncan. Open up for questions. I think it's pretty straightforward. Councillor Greig.
Oh, yes, just a quick question. Just wondering whether there's any new CCTV cameras yet to be added to the website, or is it totally up to date?
Our website only has 3 cameras, and they're quite old historic ones, so that's separate from our public and our Napier Assist and our corporate cameras.
Councillor Brown.
Oh, no, just happy to move.
Oh, happy to move. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Seconder, Councillor Mawson. Invite you to speak to that, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, so this is something I've taken a bit of an interest in. I'm very cognizant of the privacy side of this activity, but have spoken with staff and have been really reassured that we've followed best practice in this space, the benchmarking against other policies in the region and with the police satisfies me that we are dealing with the very important aspect of looking after the safety of our people in this, and overall I have feedback from the community that they feel safer having and knowing that the CCTV is active and feel safer being in our CBD because of it. So very happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Mawson.
Yeah, just through the chair, I'm very supportive of anything that's going to prevent or try and catch criminals.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Duncan.
Nice and easy.
Moving on to the LGNZ 4-monthly report. And this is receiving this report that we have been sent from LGNZ. This is an opportunity to both update ourselves as elected members in terms of the work that our membership body has been doing on our behalf, and also an opportunity to share with our wider community the work that's being undertaken at a national level on behalf of councils. Did you want to add anything specifically, Anna, to that? No. So is there any questions or discussion or anything anyone would like to note in particular as a part of this report? Councillor McGrath.
Just a note in general that 2 of our biggest cities in New Zealand have withdrawn from local government New Zealand, that being Auckland and just in the recent time Christchurch. So I hope we're not missing a trick somewhere.
Any further discussion? Happy to move. Thank you, Councillor Crown, seconded by Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Anything you'd like to speak to that?
Just quickly, and I probably wasn't going to, but just a response to Councillor McGrath, I'd like to say I'm actually quite impressed with the changes that LGNZ have made in recent times. I think that their communication has improved. I think that their advocacy work and their identification of the topics and kaupapa that are important to our communities has improved greatly. So I understand that Auckland and Christchurch have chosen not to be members, and we have been pretty critical of them in the past. But yeah, I actually think that they are doing a much better job representing us than they have in the past.
Sorry, Deputy Brosnan.
Yeah, I would totally agree that. I've been pretty vocal in the past around how I don't think the organisation has been delivering for its membership, and we've had discussions about whether or not we should retain our membership, but I agree. I think in the last 12 to 18 months we've had a considerable shift from my perspective on all of the areas that Councillor Crown has mentioned, and I am certainly feeling like we are getting something for our membership now, which has not always been the case. So yeah, happy to receive the report. It in itself is a great addition to what LGNZ has not previously done. So yeah, very happy to support the adoption, thank you, or the receiving of the report.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Excellent. Agenda item 10 is information being minutes of joint committees. We have the minutes from the Hawke's Bay Crematorium Committee, the Napier Hastings Future Development Strategy Committee, and the Clifton to Tangoyo Coastal Hazards Strategy Committee meeting. So I will take the minutes as read and open up for any questions. Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through the Mayor, just a minor error. The Hawke's Bay Crematorium Committee met on in 2024, not 2025. That's just a minor error. Thank you. I was there, so I know.
Tally forward in time. Thank you for that, Councillor Gregg. And I would also invite any of the members of those committees, if you would like to share anything in addition to the minutes that have been provided to us. Councillor Brown.
So I'm on the Coastal Hazards Committee, and I just wanted to give a bit of a shout out to the amazing work that was presented to our committee by Keith Newman. So although he's in the Hastings district, they have a community that really has rallied together around that coastal project, and he put together and presented to us like a proper book that has been published about the history of that community working together and coming together to work collaboratively with council and to come up with community-based solutions. And it was incredibly heartwarming. It was a story of frustration, but it was just amazing to see our community coming together like that. And I'd just like to say that it was really well valued, and we'd love to see more of that and try as a council, a group of councils, that we reduce the frustration and we are more enabling and helping that community-based decision making.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to receive. Okay, could I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Brown, Councillor Taraha. Any further comments? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Excellent. On to the action points register. Open up for any questions elected members may have on the items on the register.
Just through you, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to note a change since this report was published. Action 120 is now complete, and that was the workshop with Ngā Mānuka Nuka o Te Iwi about agenda items for their future meetings.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Are you able to provide us with any further context as to the direction that was received? I know this has been an area of interest for a number of elected members.
I'll be working off memory because I haven't got my notes in front of me, but Paul Whakarai may be able to help as well. The agenda items for the Māori committee moving forward. They're quite keen to hear about anything that promotes youth and youth leadership, water, as a big priority.
Well, everything that is pertaining to Aotearoa, the water, the land, also housing, health. So the major things that's affecting our people is what they really want to actually have in front of them as a paper moving forward. What they really appreciated, what they've told me afterwards, is the amount of information they are getting earlier, but we need to get more better with that, is to get the information to them earlier. So we're going to be working on that, so yeah.
Just while we have you, Marahu, did they indicate any particular areas of focus that they would like to lead papers in, so make recommendations to council?
Not really. And it's difficult with our Māori committee at the moment because we're going to have a whole lot of new members coming back on because during a triennium we have AGMs, we have different areas that a lot of our members get voted to be part of our committee, and then halfway through they may not get back on. So we have to find a way so we can keep that waka moving forward. And so that's another thing I've been putting behind my mind to try and organise a better way we can do things forward. And one of our staff members, Hilary, has actually brought up an idea, having a video, an induction to bring them forward. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
It's more of a comment just to be a consistently squeaky wheel. Reference number 61, just to express the disappointment that it's going to take us 14 months for us to get a report on what the major risks are in terms of the hazards facing Napier. And just that, I suppose, after the cyclone, I thought this would have been something that would have happened a lot quicker.
So through the chair, we're waiting on Hawke's Bay Regional Council. They're at the moment going through a process of recruiting their project manager and also an independent chair for that committee. That statement obviously is around the regional approach and doesn't reflect the work that Blake and the team are doing internally. So whilst you haven't got that report, I just want to be clear that that doesn't mean that we aren't preparing and responding internally.
Could I please also add, we'll also be doing the natural hazards chapter of the district plan. So you will be understanding at a Napier viewpoint anyway that the natural hazards that exist and what mitigations there will be in place through the district plan mechanism, well before the 14 months.
Thanks, Rachel. Any further questions? Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Crystal, thank you. Councillor Pareha, any comments?
No, all good, thank you.
No, okay. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Moving on to our reports from the Audit and Risk Committee. I will just read through them. Most of them are around receiving the reports. If anyone has any questions, please just stop me. So we first up had the Internal Audit Recommendations Progress Report, followed by the Sensitive Expenditure Mayor and Chief Executive, Internal Audit Contract Management Report, Policy Review Process Update, External Audit Actions Status Update, the Health and Safety Report, Risk Management Report, which does include in the resolution for us to approve the Council's updated list of strategic risks, which is included in the paper. And that brings us to the conclusion of the Audit and Risk Report. So are there any questions or discussion with regards to any of those? Right, so I'll ask for a mover and seconder. Thank you. Councillor Mawson, Councillor Crown. I'd like to speak to that. Councillor Crown.
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Come along to Audit and Risk, guys. Welcome any time. I think there has been some really great shifts in our reporting and our understanding of risks in our health and safety portfolio as well. And we're moving through finance and resolution around audit items that have been outstanding for some time. There's really good progress going on, so just want to encourage and welcome anyone to be there and to get a bit more detail on those things too.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I agree. I'd love to see more councillors coming along to audit and risk. Councillor McGrath.
Yes, through the chair, and that's almost another direction from the mayor. She did suggest that we should all attend, and I've attended a couple. And going from what we spoke about earlier, it appears all the councillors will have enough time to attend, Mayor Wise.
Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. On to our last agenda item in open, the reports under delegated authority, tenders let, which we have to receive one contract, which was the Centennial Hall and Graham Low Stand gutter upgrade, to be awarded to BR2 Free Limited in the sum of $240,000, $960,000. Any questions? Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Mawson, thank you. No one. Councillor Crystal, thank you. Any comments?
Good to keep up with our infrastructure.
Thank you, Councillor Mawson. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And could I please have a mover and seconder to move into public? Thank you, Councillor Tariha and Councillor Mawson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, we'll just have a brief few minutes break and then we'll reconvene for public excluded.